What would you do if saving a stranger meant losing everything you had left? The desert stretched endless under the August sun, a sea of red rock and dust that swallowed hope as easily as it swallowed water. The heat rose in shimmering waves, turning the distant mesas into ghosts that danced on the horizon. This was Arizona territory in 1883, where the land killed the weak and the strong alike, where mercy was as rare as rain. Jake Brennan rode alone through this furnace, his horse's hooves grinding the cracked earth to powder. 3 days without sleep had carved shadows beneath his eyes, turned his face to leather. The Winchester rifle across his saddle was loaded, always loaded, because a man on the run couldn't afford hesitation. Behind him, somewhere in the dust and distance, men with badges and guns were hunting him. Ahead, there was only more desert, more hiding, more running. He'd been running for 6 months now, ever since that day in Tombstone when everything changed. The memory played in his mind like a broken phonograph, always the same scene. Sheriff Thomas Wade reaching for his gun, the split-second decision, the shot that ended Wade's life and shattered Jake's own. Murder, they called it. Wanted dead or alive, the posters said. $3,000 for a man who'd only tried to do right. Jake pulled his hat lower against the sun and tried not to think about it. Tried not to remember the look on Wade's face when he fell. Tried not to wonder if there'd ever be a place he could stop running. That's when he heard the scream. It cut through the afternoon stillness like a blade, high and raw, echoing off the canyon walls. Jake's hand went to his rifle before his mind could catch up. Every instinct told him to keep riding, to stay invisible, to survive. But something deeper, something that 6 months of running hadn't killed, made him pull the reins hard. Another scream, closer now, desperate. Jake swore under his breath and kicked his horse toward the sound. The animal surged forward, plunging down a rocky slope toward Red Rock Mesa. Dust billowed behind them as they descended into Devil's Throat Canyon, a narrow gash in the earth where shadows pooled like spilled ink. The canyon opened into a small clearing, and Jake saw her. An Apache woman, young and fierce, stood with her back against a towering boulder. 3 gray wolves circled her, lips pulled back from yellow teeth, their growls a low thunder. Blood ran down her left arm from a gash in her shoulder, but her eyes held no fear, only rage, only fire. She gripped a broken piece of cactus spine like a knife, slashing at the nearest wolf. One animal lay dead at her feet, its throat torn open by what must have been her hunting knife before it broke. She'd already won 1 fight, but 3 against 1, wounded. The math was simple and cruel. Jake didn't think. His rifle came up smooth as breathing. The first shot cracked the silence, and the lead wolf dropped mid-leap, dead before it hit the ground. The other 2 spun toward him, snarling, and for a heartbeat, Jake saw the calculation in their eyes. New threat. Bigger threat. The second wolf charged. Jake worked the Winchester's lever, chambered another round, fired. The animal twisted in midair and fell. But the third was already moving, low and fast, coming at him from the side where the boulder created a blind spot. The woman shouted something in Apache. Jake dove left as the wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air where his throat had been. He hit the ground hard, rolled, brought the rifle up, but the wolf was faster, already turning, bunching its muscles to leap. A rock the size of a fist struck the wolf's skull with a wet crack. The animal stumbled, shook its head. The woman had thrown it, And now she was moving, limping forward with that broken cactus spine raised like a sword. The wolf turned toward her, confused, and Jake took the shot. The canyon rang with the echo. Then silence, deep and sudden. 3 dead wolves, 2 people breathing hard. The woman and Jake stared at each other across 10 feet of blood-stained earth. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 25, with strong features and dark hair pulled back in a single braid. The wound on her arm looked bad, but not fatal. What struck him most was the way she held herself, standing straight despite the pain, chin up, ready to fight again if she had to. No victim here, no damsel waiting for rescue. Jake slowly lowered his rifle, showing empty hands. "You hurt?" She shook her head, still watching him with those fierce eyes. "I've had worse." Her English was perfect, only slightly accented. "Who are you?" "Just passing through. Name's Jake." "Kaya." She studied him the way a general might study a battlefield, assessing threats and allies. "You're either very brave or very stupid, white man." Despite everything, despite the blood and the wolves and the wanted poster folded in his saddlebag, Jake felt his mouth twitch into something almost like a smile. "Been called both, usually the second." For a moment, something that might have been humor flickered in her eyes. Then she swayed slightly, catching herself against the boulder. The blood from her shoulder was flowing steadier now. Jake moved forward slowly, unthreatening. "Let me look at that." She hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. Up close, he could see the wound was a clean tear, probably from a wolf's claw during the first attack. He pulled off his bandana, then, when that proved too small, tore a strip from his shirt sleeve. His hands were gentle as he wrapped the cloth around her arm, the movements automatic from years of ranger training. "You've done this before," Kaya said, watching his face. "Ranger training, long time ago." He pulled the knot tight, but not too tight, then stepped back, reached for his canteen and offered it to her. She took it, drank deep, then handed it back. Only then did Jake allow himself a drink. The water was warm and tasted of dust, but it was wet. They sat there in the clearing, surrounded by dead wolves, and for the first time in 3 days, Jake felt something other than fear. The woman lowered herself to a rock, and he sat across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "You always save women from wolves?" Kaya asked. "Only on Thursdays." He pulled a piece of jerky from his pack, tore it in half, offered her the larger piece. "Today's my lucky day." She took the jerky, and he saw the corner of her mouth lift. Not quite a smile, but close. The sound of her quiet laugh was like water in the desert, unexpected and precious. "Mine too, apparently." They chewed in silence for a moment, and Jake found himself studying her. The way she sat, alert, even while resting. The way her eyes constantly scanned the canyon rim. A warrior's habits, a survivor's instincts. "What's a ranger doing running alone in Apache territory?" Kaya asked. Jake felt the old weight settle on his shoulders. "Not a ranger anymore. Things changed." She didn't press, didn't ask what things or how they changed. That small act of respect, of understanding that some stories needed time, hit Jake harder than he'd expected. For 6 months, everyone he'd encountered had wanted something from him. Information, money, his death. This woman who owed him nothing simply nodded and let him keep his ghosts. "The wolves will bring their pack back," Kaya said, standing. She moved stiffly but strong. "There's a cave half-mile north. We should move before they come. Jake got to his feet. Lead the way. You know this land better than I do. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, that he acknowledged her expertise. That he didn't try to take charge or tell her what to do. Follow close. The path isn't easy. She wasn't lying. Kaya led him through a maze of rock that Jake would have sworn was impassable. She moved like water, finding the gaps and spaces, reading the land the way other people read books. Twice she stopped to check their back trail, making sure they weren't followed. Once she paused to gather strange leaves from a plant Jake didn't recognize. For the wound, she explained, not looking back. Stops infection better than your whiskey. Jake watched as she crushed the leaves between her palms, then calmly smeared the green paste over her own injury without so much as a wince. She didn't ask for help, didn't need it. The demonstration of pure competence, of self-sufficiency, impressed him more than he wanted to admit. "You know medicine?" he asked. "My grandmother taught me everything about survival in this land." She wiped her hands on her buckskin dress. "Wisdom passed down through generations. Your people carry knowledge white men have forgotten. Or never learned." The past tense in her voice held weight, held loss. Kaya started walking again, and Jake followed. The cave appeared like a mirage, a dark opening in the red rock that seemed to materialize only when they were steps away. Inside, the air was 10 degrees cooler, the light soft and dim. Deep enough to hide in, shallow enough to have a back exit if needed. Strategic, safe. Kaya settled against one wall while Jake checked the entrance. When he turned back, he saw her eyes fixed on something that had fallen from his saddlebag. The wanted poster lay on the cave floor, his own face staring up from the crude drawing. Jacob Brennan, murder of Sheriff Thomas Wade, $3,000, dead or alive. Jake's hand drifted toward his gun, old reflexes kicking in. But Kaya just looked at the poster, then at him, her face unreadable. "Did you do it?" she asked. The question was simple, direct. No judgment in her voice, just a need to know the truth. "He drew first," Jake said quietly. "But his boss owns the judge. I couldn't get a fair trial." Kaya nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she already suspected. "I understand running from false justice. My people do it every day." The simple acceptance in her words cracked something in Jake's chest. For 6 months, he'd carried the weight of that shooting alone, never knowing if he'd made the right choice, if he was truly innocent, or just telling himself comfortable lies. This woman he'd known for an hour didn't question, didn't doubt. She understood. "The man who owns that judge," Kaya continued, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "Luther Blackwood?" Jake's head snapped up. "You know him?" "He killed my family 3 years ago." Each word was carved from ice. "Burned our camp to steal the land. Murdered my parents, my brother, everyone." The air in the cave seemed to solidify. Jake saw it now, the old pain beneath her strength, the scar tissue that had formed around a wound that would never fully heal. He knew that look. He wore it himself. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it. "That kind of evil needs to be stopped." Kaya leaned forward, and her eyes were no longer just fierce. They were calculating, planning. "But I can't do it alone. I've tried. He has too many men, too much power. Every time I get close, he slips away." Jake understood what she was asking, without her having to say it. An alliance. A partnership between two people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid. It was exactly the kind of thing that would get him killed. But looking at Kaya, seeing the determination in her face, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength in her bearing, Jake realized he'd already made his decision. He'd made it the moment he heard her scream and chose to ride toward danger instead of away from it. "What did you have in mind?" he asked. Kaya's smile was sharp as a knife. "I know where Blackwood's men patrol. I know the land. I can track, hunt, survive anywhere in this territory." She paused. "But I'm one woman with a bow. You're a ranger with a gun and knowledge of how white men think, how they fight." "Former ranger," Jake corrected. "The skills don't disappear just because the badge does." She held out her hand, and there was nothing uncertain in the gesture. This was a warrior offering an alliance between equals. "Help me stop Blackwood. In return, I'll help you survive long enough to clear your name." Jake looked at her hand, then at her face, thought about the 6 months of running, of hiding, of slowly losing himself in the desert, thought about the alternative she was offering. Dangerous, yes. Possibly fatal, absolutely. But it was movement. It was purpose. It was something other than waiting to be caught or killed. He reached out and gripped her hand. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. "Partners." "Partners," Kaya agreed. Outside the cave, the sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. Inside, 2 people who'd been running in different directions had found each other and chosen to run together instead. Neither of them knew if they'd survive the choice. But for the first time in a long time, both of them felt something other than despair. Jake settled against the cave wall, his rifle across his lap. Kaya sat opposite him, already checking her weapons, planning their next move. The partnership was only minutes old, but it felt right, felt solid. "We'll need supplies," Kaya said, "and we'll need to stay ahead of whoever's hunting you." "About that." Jake's voice went flat. "There's a bounty hunter named Virgil Cade, best tracker in the territory. If Blackwood wants me dead bad enough to spend money, Cade's probably already on my trail. Then we move at first light, head north toward the mountains where tracking's harder." Jake nodded. It was a good plan. Simple, smart. The kind of plan that might actually work if they were lucky and careful. But luck, Jake had learned, was a fickle friend in the Arizona territory. Miles away, in a different saloon, in a different town, a man with cold eyes and fast hands looked at a photograph. The face in the picture was younger, cleaner, but unmistakably Jake Brennan. The man traced the image with one finger, and his smile held no warmth. "Hello, little brother," Virgil Cade whispered to the photograph. "Been a long time." He folded the picture carefully and slipped it into his vest pocket, right next to his heart, right where family belonged. Then he stood, dropped coins on the bar, and walked out into the fading light. The hunt had begun. And this time, Virgil thought, this time he'd prove once and for all who was the better man, who deserved to survive, who deserved to win. Behind him, the saloon doors swung slowly closed. Ahead, the desert waited, indifferent to the drama of men, caring only that the strong survived and the weak became dust. In the cave, Jake felt a sudden chill despite the warm air. He looked at Kaya and found her watching him, her expression thoughtful. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. But her hand moved to the knife at her belt, and her eyes scanned the canyon entrance as if expecting company. "Just a feeling, like something's coming." Jake trusted feelings. Feelings had kept him alive when logic said he should be dead. "We'll be ready." "Yes," Kaya agreed. "We will." The sun dropped below the canyon rim, and darkness rushed in to fill the spaces light had abandoned. Two people sat in silence, bound by circumstance and choice, waiting for whatever dawn would bring. Neither slept, neither spoke. But in the quiet, something was forming. Not just a plan, not just an alliance, something that might save them both, or destroy them together. The desert didn't care which. The desert never did. Dawn came to the desert like a benediction, soft light washing the red rocks gold. Jake woke to find Kaya already standing at the cave entrance, her silhouette sharp against the brightening sky. She hadn't made a sound, but he'd felt the shift in the air when she moved. Old instincts, ranger instincts, the kind that kept a man breathing in dangerous country. "Sleep well?" he asked, his voice rough from the dry air. "Long enough." She didn't turn, her eyes scanning the canyon below. "We have company, or we did." Jake was on his feet in seconds, rifle in hand. "Where?" "3 riders, maybe 4. They crossed our path from last night about an hour ago." She pointed to a spot in the distance where the morning light caught disturbed sand. "They stopped there, studying where we went." Jake moved beside her, impressed despite himself. He'd been trained to track, had spent years reading signs in the wilderness, but he would have missed those marks entirely. "How can you tell they stopped?" "The hoofprints overlap, circles instead of straight lines. That means the horses were standing still while the riders looked around." She glanced at him. "They're not very good trackers, or they would have found us already, but they're persistent." "Blackwood's men? Or yours?" She finally looked at him fully, and in the morning light he could see how young she really was. Young, but with eyes that had seen too much. "The question is, do we run or do we teach them why following us was a mistake?" Jake considered. Running was smart. Running kept you alive. But running also meant always looking over your shoulder, always waiting for the next attack. Sometimes the only way to buy breathing room was to hit back hard enough that your enemies thought twice about the next attempt. "There's a canyon ahead," Kaya continued. "Broken Jaw. One way in, one way out. If they follow us there, we'll know for sure they're hunting us, and we can deal with them on ground we choose." She wasn't asking permission. She was laying out options, waiting to see if he'd trust her judgment. Jake found himself smiling, despite the danger. "You've got a devious mind, Kaya Redfeather." "I've had good teachers." This time her smile reached her eyes. "Survival teaches you to think 3 moves ahead, or you don't survive." They rode out as the sun cleared the eastern peaks. 2 figures on horseback, moving through a landscape that seemed painted in ochre and shadow. Kaya led, choosing paths that looked impossible until you were on them, guiding them through terrain that would confound any tracker without Apache knowledge. Behind them, deliberately obvious, they left a trail a child could follow. The bait was set, now to see if the fish would bite. Broken Jaw Canyon lived up to its name. The entrance was a narrow cleft in the rock face, barely wide enough for a horse to pass single file. Inside, the walls rose 50 feet on either side, smooth stone that offered no handholds, no escape. The canyon floor stretched maybe 200 yards before opening into a small basin ringed by boulders. Perfect killing ground if you knew what you were doing. Perfect trap if you didn't. "Hide in those rocks," Kaya said, pointing to a cluster of massive stones on the left side. "I'll draw them in." Jake felt his chest tighten. Alone? That's too dangerous. She turned in her saddle, and the look she gave him was equal parts amusement and annoyance. Who saved who from wolves yesterday? Trust me, Ranger. The use of his old title, said with just enough mockery to take the edge off, made him laugh. She was right, of course. She'd been fighting her own battles long before he showed up. But the urge to protect, to stand between her and danger, was strong. Old habits from a life he'd left behind. "Just be careful," he said. "Careful keeps you alive," she agreed. "But sometimes bold wins the fight." Jake took up position in the rocks, while Kaya positioned herself in the center of the basin, clearly visible from the canyon entrance. She looked small there, alone, vulnerable. Bait that any predator would find irresistible. But Jake had seen her fight wolves with a broken spine. He knew what lay beneath that seemingly fragile exterior. They didn't wait long. The sound of hooves on stone echoed through the canyon. 3 riders came through the narrow passage, moving cautiously, but not cautiously enough. They were young, maybe early 20s, wearing the kind of rough clothes that marked them as hired guns rather than professional soldiers. Blackwood's men, then. Cheap muscle bought for a few dollars and the promise of easy violence. The one in front, a lanky kid with a scar across his left cheek, saw Kaya and grinned. There, the Apache woman. They rode into the basin, spreading out in a loose semicircle. Their hands rested on their guns, but they hadn't drawn yet. They thought they had all the time in the world. Thought 3 armed men against 1 wounded woman was a sure thing. The scarred one, clearly the leader, leaned forward in his saddle. "Boss wants you dead, girl. Nothing personal." Kaya stood perfectly still, her bow held loosely at her side. When she spoke, her voice carried across the basin, clear and cold. "Everything's personal when you burn families alive." The leader's grin faltered. "What are you talking about?" 3 years ago, a camp near Fort Bowie. You weren't there, but your boss was. Luther Blackwood and his men. They murdered everyone, women, children, elders who couldn't run." Her voice never wavered, never rose. The absolute control made her words more chilling than any scream. "So yes, this is personal." The man on the right started to say something. That's when Jake fired. The shot cracked through the basin like thunder, and the rider jerked backward, a red flower blooming on his shoulder. Not a killing shot. Jake wasn't interested in murder, just in ending the fight fast. The man tumbled from his horse, hitting the ground hard. The leader spun toward the sound, going for his gun, but he was looking the wrong direction, expecting the threat from behind him. Kaya's arrow took him in the thigh before his pistol cleared leather. He screamed, more from shock than pain, and his horse reared. The third man, younger than the others and clearly less experienced, panicked. He got his gun out, but couldn't decide which way to aim. Jake showed himself just enough to draw fire, then dropped back as bullets spanged off the rocks above his head. While the kid was focused on where Jake had been, Kaya moved. She didn't run. She glided, smooth and silent as smoke, circling wide while the kid's attention was elsewhere. By the time he realized his mistake and turned, she was already there, her knife pressed against his throat. "Drop it," she said quietly. The gun hit the dirt. In less than 30 seconds, 3 armed men had been reduced to 1 wounded, 1 bleeding, and 1 very frightened kid with a blade at his jugular. Jake emerged from cover, his rifle trained on the leader, who was trying to pull the arrow from his leg. "I wouldn't," Jake advised. "You'll bleed faster." The man's hand fell away. Up close, Jake could see he was barely older than the kid Kaya was holding, maybe 22, with the kind of swagger that came from never facing real consequences. That was about to change. Jake moved to the man he'd shot first, checking the wound. Shoulder, through and through, messy but not fatal if treated soon. "You'll live," he said, then louder, "All of you will live if you're smart about what happens next." The leader spat blood. "Blackwood's got 20 men. More. You can't win."
"We don't need to win," Kaya said, still holding her knife steady. "We need to survive long enough for the truth to come out. There's a difference." Jake walked over to the leader, crouching down to eye level. "What's your name, son?" "Clay. Clay Morrison." Defiance and pain warred in his expression. "Well, Clay Morrison, here's how this plays. You're going to ride back to Blackwood. You're going to tell him that Jake Brennan and Kaya Redfeather aren't running anymore. Tell him we know what he did. Tell him we have proof. And tell him that every man he sends after us, we'll send back. He'll kill me for failing." "Then you better make it sound good," Jake said without sympathy. "Now get your friends and get out of my sight." Kaya released the kid, who stumbled toward his horse. The wounded men struggled to mount, leaving blood on the saddles. They looked smaller now, diminished, the swagger beaten out by fear and pain. As they rode out of the basin, Jake called after them, "Clay, one more thing. Next time Blackwood sends men, make sure they're better than you, for their sake." The sound of retreating hooves faded, leaving Jake and Kaya alone in the sudden quiet. She lowered her bow, rolled her shoulders to release the tension, then looked at him with something like approval in her eyes. "Not bad for a white man," she said. "Not bad for a partnership that's barely a day old," he countered. They led their horses out of Broken Jaw Canyon, angling north toward higher ground where the air would be cooler and the water more plentiful. Neither spoke much during the ride, but the silence was comfortable now, the quiet of two people who'd fought together and learned they could trust each other's instincts. It was Kaya who finally broke the silence. "We need supplies, and we need somewhere to rest that isn't a cave or a canyon. Somewhere with walls and a roof." "I might know a place," Jake said. "If the owner's still alive and still friendly." "A man named Sam Porter has a ranch about 20 miles south of Socorro. We served together in the Rangers back when I still wore the badge." "You trust him?" Jake thought about Sam, grizzled, tough, with a sense of honor as solid as bedrock. The kind of man who'd give you his last dollar if you needed it, then punch you in the mouth if you tried to pay him back. "With my life." "Then we go." Kaya adjusted her course slightly, aiming toward the distant peaks that marked the New Mexico border. "But we ride careful. Those men will report back soon, and Blackwood will be angry." She was right. By sundown, Luther Blackwood would know his men had failed. By tomorrow, he'd be planning his response. The trick was to stay ahead of that response, to keep moving, keep fighting, keep breathing. The landscape changed as they rode. Red rock gave way to scrub grass, then to rolling hills dotted with piñon and juniper. They crossed the Gila River at a shallow ford, the horses drinking deep, while Jake and Kaya refilled their canteens. The water was cold and sweet, tasting of snowmelt from mountains still weeks away. On the far bank, Kaya paused to gather more of the healing plants, her hands quick and sure as she selected leaves and roots. Jake watched her work, fascinated by the depth of knowledge she carried. Every plant had a purpose, every root, every flower, every piece of bark. She was a walking library of survival, and he found himself wanting to learn everything she knew. "Your grandmother," he said as they rode on. "She taught you all this?" "She taught me to see the world as the Apache see it.
not as something to conquer or own, but as something to understand and live with. Kaya tucked the plants into her saddlebag. The land provides if you know how to ask. It kills if you demand. Sounds like wisdom. Sounds like common sense, she corrected.
But white men don't seem to have much of that when it comes to the desert. There was no heat in her words, just statement of fact. Jake couldn't argue. He'd seen too many settlers try to force the land to be something it wasn't, digging where they shouldn't dig, building where they shouldn't build. Most of them died or gave up within a year. "Tell me about Blackwood," he said. "How did it start?" Kaya was quiet for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, seeing the past instead of the trail ahead. "We had a camp. Small, maybe 30 people. We'd moved there after the cavalry forced us off our traditional lands. Blackwood wanted the territory for copper mining. He came with papers, said the land was his, said we had to leave." "And when you refused?" "We didn't refuse. My father, he was the elder. He tried to negotiate, tried to explain we had nowhere else to go, that this was all we had left." Her hands tightened on the reins. "Blackwood gave us 3 days. On the second night, his men came. They burned everything, shot anyone who ran. I hid in a dry creek bed, covered myself with mud and stones. I heard my mother screaming, heard my little brother crying, heard the gunshots." Jake felt something hard and cold settle in his gut. "How old was your brother?" 12. "Just that, just 12, said in a voice that held an ocean of grief. They rode in silence after that. What could you say to someone who'd lost everything? What words could possibly touch that kind of pain? Jake knew from experience that the answer was none. Silence was better. Silence, at least, was honest. The sun was dropping toward the horizon when they spotted the ranch. It sat in a small valley, protected by low hills on 3 sides, with a clear view of the approach. Smart positioning. Defensible. The kind of place a man with enemies would choose. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Jake felt relief wash through him. Sam was alive then. Still here. Still fighting whatever fights an old ranger fought these days. They were still a quarter-mile out when a figure appeared on the porch, rifle in hand. Even at this distance, Jake recognized the stance, the way Sam held the weapon like it was part of his arm. The old man didn't lower the gun as they approached, but he didn't shoot either. Waiting. Watching. Jake raised his hand, palm out, the old signal that meant friend, not foe. Sam's rifle dipped slightly, then rose again. Trust but verify. That was Sam's way. They rode closer, close enough for faces to become clear in the fading light. "Well, I'll be," Sam's voice carried across the yard, rough as gravel and twice as hard. "Jake Brennan. Thought you were dead, or worse." Jake pulled up his horse, keeping his hands visible. "Sam, I need help." The old man's eyes shifted to Kaya, taking in her Apache clothing, the bow across her back, the proud way she sat her horse. "And you brought company. Apache?" "Chiricahua." "Kaya Redfeather." Kaya met his gaze without flinching, without submission. Sam studied her for a long moment. Then something in his weathered face softened. "Redfeather, I knew your father. Whitehawk. Good man. Honest man. I was sorry to hear about what happened to your camp." He lowered his rifle. "Come inside, both of you. Looks like you've got stories to tell." The ranch house was small but solid, built from adobe and timber that had weathered decades of desert sun and winter cold.
Inside, it smelled of wood smoke and coffee, leather and gun oil. The walls were bare, except for a few photographs and an old cavalry saber crossed with a ranger badge. Sam's history, written in objects instead of words. Sam poured them coffee, strong enough to strip paint, and waited while they drank. Only when both cups were half empty did he speak. "Jake, that warrant's still hot. Every lawman and bounty hunter from here to Texas is looking for you."
What happened in Tombstone? Jake set his cup down, the ceramic clicking against the wooden table. Sheriff Wade was dirty, working for Blackwood. I found out Wade helped murder a homesteader family for their land deed. Thompson family, out near Fort Bowie. When I confronted him, tried to bring him in proper, he drew on me. I was faster. "But Blackwood owns Judge Morrison," Sam said. It wasn't a question. "Exactly. Rigged trial. Guilty verdict before I even testified. My own testimony wasn't allowed as evidence." The bitterness in Jake's voice surprised him. He thought he'd buried that anger months ago. "They were going to hang me at dawn. I broke out the night before." Sam nodded slowly. "Judge Morrison's been Blackwood's man for years. Half the land deals in southern Arizona run through that courthouse, all of them crooked as a dog's hind leg." He turned to Kaya. "And you're mixed up in this, how?" "That homesteader family," Kaya said quietly. "Thompson."
"4 dead," the report said. "That's right," Sam confirmed. "The same night they died, the same men came to my camp." Kaya's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "I heard them talking while they burned us out. Heard them say they'd finished the job on the whites, now for the Apache. It was all one operation, all one plan." Jake felt like he'd been punched. "The same night?" "The same night," Kaya repeated. "Blackwood wanted the Thompson land and our camp. Both sat on the same copper vein. He killed both groups in one sweep." Sam swore, long and creative. "How many families has that bastard murdered?" "At least a dozen," the old man said, standing to pace. "Maybe more. Blackwood's been buying up land for 5 years, ever since the geologists found copper and silver in these hills. Anybody who won't sell disappears. I've been documenting it, sending reports to Santa Fe, but nothing happens. He owns too many people." "Then we make something happen," Jake said.
"We find proof. Real proof. The kind that even bought judges can't ignore." Kaya leaned forward. "Do you have evidence? Papers? Witnesses?" Sam moved to a cabinet, pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've got deeds, letters, testimony from survivors. But it's not enough. What we need is Blackwood's own records. He keeps a ledger, they say. Every deal, every payoff, every murder. All written down because the man's arrogant enough to think he's untouchable." "Where's this ledger?" Jake asked. "His office in Tucson. Locked safe, guarded day and night." Sam spread the papers on the table. "I've tried to get to it. So have others. 2 men died trying. It's a fortress." Kaya studied the papers, her finger tracing names and dates. "These families. I recognize some of these names. Apache, Mexican, white settlers. He doesn't care who he kills as long as they're in his way." "That's Blackwood," Sam agreed. "Equal opportunity murderer." They talked long into the night, planning and discarding plans, looking for angles and finding walls. The ledger was the key, they all agreed, but getting to it seemed impossible, until Kaya spoke the words that would change everything. "What if we don't go to the ledger? What if we make Blackwood bring it to us?" Both men looked at her. "How?" Jake asked.
He wants us dead. He's sending men. What if we make him so angry, so desperate, that he comes himself? Brings his records to show his investors why he needs more money to deal with us. Make it public. Make it loud. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of bold move that might actually work. Sam was grinning. "Girl, you think like a warrior and plan like a general. I like it." "It'll take time to set up," Jake said, his mind already working through logistics. "And we'll need help. Can't be just the three of us." "I know people," Sam said. "Good people. People who've lost family to Blackwood."
"They'll fight if they think there's a real chance." Kaya stood, moving to the window. Outside, the stars were coming out, bright and cold in the desert sky. "My people will fight too. Dakota, the elder who leads what's left of our band. He'll listen if I ask." "Then we have the start of an army," Jake said, small but motivated. Sam raised his coffee cup. "To small armies and big ambitions." They drank to that, three people bound by loss and hope, planning a war against a man who'd taken everything from them. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere out there, Luther Blackwood slept in his bed, secure in his power, confident in his invincibility. He had no idea what was coming. No idea that three people in a small ranch house were weaving the rope that would hang him. But he would learn. Soon enough, he would learn. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Jake woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Sam already up and moving, despite the gray light that said dawn was still minutes away. Old habits, ranger habits, the kind that kept a man alive when younger, lazier men ended up in graves. Kaya was outside. He could see her through the window, moving through a series of stretches and exercises that looked like a dance, but were clearly combat training. Her movements were fluid, precise, each one flowing into the next with the kind of grace that came from years of practice. She'd been up even earlier than Sam. "She doesn't sleep much, does she?" Sam said, following Jake's gaze. "Can you blame her?" Jake accepted the cup of coffee Sam offered. "After what she's been through?" "No," Sam admitted, "but lack of sleep makes mistakes. Mistakes get people killed. You watch her. Make sure she rests when she can." "She's not a child, Sam. She's a warrior." "Warriors die too," the old man said quietly. "Usually because they forget they're human." They ate breakfast together, the three of them, as the sun finally cleared the eastern peaks and painted the valley gold. Sam poured fresh coffee, black as midnight and twice as strong. The food was simple but good, and for a few minutes they let themselves pretend this was normal. Just three people sharing a meal, not three conspirators planning a war. But the illusion couldn't last. Sam pushed his plate away and pulled out a map, spreading it across the table. "If we're doing this, we need to be smart. Kaya, you said your elder, Dakota, might help. How far to your camp?" 2 days' ride northeast, into the Pinaleno Mountains. Kaya traced the route with her finger. "The path is difficult. Most white men can't find it." "But you can guide us?" "I can guide Jake," she said. "You should stay here, Sam. Someone needs to gather the others you mentioned. Settlers who lost family. Anyone willing to fight." Sam started to protest, but Jake cut him off. "She's right. You know these people. You can convince them. Kaya and I aren't exactly trusted figures right now. Wanted criminal and Apache woman? We'd scare them off before we could explain." The old ranger scowled, but he nodded. "Fine. But you take supplies. Food, ammunition, medicine. And you watch each other's backs. Blackwood's men are still out there, and they'll be looking for revenge after what you did to them yesterday." "We'll be careful," Jake promised. "Careful's good," Sam said. "Lucky's better. Try to be both."
They left within the hour, saddlebags loaded with provisions, weapons cleaned and ready. Sam stood on the porch watching them go, and Jake felt a pang of something like homesickness. This place, this ranch, it reminded him of what he'd lost. The sense of belonging somewhere, the feeling of having a purpose beyond simple survival. "He's a good man," Kaya said as they rode north. "One of the best I've known. He trusts you completely. That's rare for white men when it comes to people like me." Jake glanced at her. "Sam judges people by their actions, not their skin. It's why he was a good ranger, why he's a good man." They rode in comfortable silence after that, the horses finding their rhythm, the land opening up before them in waves of grass and stone. The air smelled of sage and pine, clean and sharp. Nothing like the thick humidity Jake remembered from his childhood in East Texas. This was different country, harder country, but honest in its harshness. By midday, they'd crossed into the foothills of the Pinaleños, the terrain becoming steeper, rockier, more difficult. Kaya led them along paths that seemed to appear only when you were on them, reading the landscape like text in a book. Twice, she stopped to check their back trail, making sure they weren't followed. "You really think Blackwood's men are still tracking us?" Jake asked during the second stop.
"I think Blackwood's pride is wounded," Kaya said. "Men like him don't forget insults, and we didn't just insult him. We sent his men back bleeding and humiliated." She studied the valley below, her eyes sharp. "If I were him, I'd send better men this time, professionals. Bounty hunters. Or worse." She mounted her horse again. "Come, we should reach the hidden valley by nightfall if we push hard." They pushed hard. The path climbed steadily, winding through stands of ponderosa pine and Douglas fir, the air growing cooler and thinner. Jake's horse labored on the steep sections, but Kaya's animal moved with the sure-footedness of a mountain goat, bred for this terrain, trained from birth to navigate impossible slopes. It was late afternoon when Kaya suddenly raised her hand, signaling a stop. Jake pulled up beside her, following her gaze. At first he saw nothing but trees and rock. Then movement, subtle as breath, as two figures materialized from the forest. Apache warriors, both young, both armed with rifles that looked well-maintained and ready. They wore a mix of traditional and white man's clothing, practical combinations of buckskin and cotton, moccasins and boots. Their faces were hard, suspicious, and their rifles were pointed directly at Jake. Kaya spoke in Apache, her words quick and firm. The warriors responded, their voices skeptical. Back and forth it went, a negotiation Jake couldn't follow, but could read in body language and tone. These men didn't trust him, didn't want him in their camp, saw him as just another white man with a gun. Finally, one of the warriors lowered his rifle slightly and spoke to Jake in accented English. "Kaya Redfeather says you saved her life, says you fight against Blackwood. This true?" "It's true," Jake said simply. "Many white men say they fight for justice. Then they kill us anyway." The warrior's eyes were hard as flint. "Why should we believe you different?" It was a fair question. Jake had no answer that would satisfy them, no proof beyond his word and Kaya's trust. So he did the only thing he could. He unloaded his rifle, slowly and deliberately, then handed it to the warrior. Defenseless in enemy territory, surrounded by men who had every reason to hate him. "Because I'm putting my life in your hands," Jake said. "I'm betting you're better men than the ones who killed Kaya's family. Better than Blackwood. Better than the people who've given you every reason to hate my kind." He paused. "I could be wrong. You could shoot me right here. But I don't think you will. I think Kaya's faith in you is well placed."
The warrior looked at the rifle in his hands, then at Kaya, then back at Jake. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of respect. He handed the rifle back. "I am Two Hawks," he said. "If Kaya trusts you, we will let you live. For now." He gestured toward the path ahead. "Come, Dakota waits." They rode deeper into the mountains, the two warriors leading, Kaya and Jake following. The hidden valley appeared like a secret tucked between high peaks, invisible from below. Maybe 15 wickiups scattered across the valley floor, traditional Apache dwellings made of branches and hides. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near the stream. Elders sat in the shade, working on crafts or simply watching the day pass. It looked peaceful. It looked like home. But Jake could see the armed warriors stationed at strategic points, the way every adult wore a weapon, the underlying tension that said these people knew safety was an illusion. They were ready to fight, ready to run, ready to die if necessary. Dakota waited in the center of the camp, standing beside a fire that burned despite the afternoon heat. He was older than Jake expected, maybe 60, with a face like weathered stone and eyes that missed nothing. A long scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from some long-ago battle. He wore traditional clothing and a cavalry officer's coat, the juxtaposition somehow fitting. Kaya dismounted and approached him, speaking in Apache. Her words were respectful but firm, not begging, but asking as one warrior to another. Dakota listened without interruption, his eyes occasionally flicking to Jake, assessing, judging. When Kaya finished, Dakota was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his English perfect, almost without accent. "Kaya Redfeather, daughter of my friend White Hawk, you bring a white man with a gun to our hidden place, a ranger, the same kind of men who killed my son 5 years ago." "He is not a ranger anymore," Kaya said, "and he is not like the men who killed Little Fox. They all wear the same face to me." Dakota's voice was cold. "Why should I trust this one?" Jake dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. He didn't bow or scrape or try to placate. Dakota would see through that in a heartbeat. Instead, he met the elder's eyes with respect, but not submission. "You shouldn't trust me," Jake said. "You have no reason to. But I'm not here to ask for trust. I'm here to offer my gun in a fight we both need to win." "Explain." "Luther Blackwood wants you dead, wants your land. He's already murdered Kaya's family, a dozen homesteader families, probably more. He won't stop until he takes everything." Jake gestured to the valley, the wickiups, the children playing by the stream. "He'll come for this place eventually. You know it, I know it. Question is, do we fight him separately and die, or do we fight him together and maybe, just maybe, win?" Dakota's expression didn't change. "You speak of fighting together, of partnership between Apache and white man. I have heard these words before. They always end with Apache blood in the dirt and white men taking what they want." "I'm not asking you to trust white men," Jake said. "I'm asking you to trust Kaya. She thinks this fight can be won. She thinks I can help. I'm betting she's smarter than both of us combined." For the first time, something like amusement flickered in Dakota's eyes. He looked at Kaya, who stood straight and proud, waiting for his judgment. "You believe in this man?" "I believe he fights for justice, not gold," Kaya said. "I believe he sees me as a warrior, not a woman to protect or possess. That is rare. It is valuable. It is worth trusting." Dakota nodded slowly. Your father taught you to read men well. If you say this one is different, I will consider it. He turned back to Jake. But I do not give my trust easily. You will prove yourself first. How? 2 hawks. Dakota gestured to the warrior who'd escorted them. You will race him to the mesa top. Then you will fight him, hand to hand. If you survive, we will talk. Jake glanced at Kaya, who gave him an encouraging nod.
2 Hawks was already moving toward the edge of camp, stretching his shoulders like a boxer before a fight. The man was younger, probably faster, and he knew this terrain like he knew his own heartbeat. This was going to hurt. Fair enough, Jake said, and followed. The race was brutal. 2 Hawks set a punishing pace, running straight up the mountainside like gravity was optional. Jake pushed himself hard, lungs burning, legs screaming, but managed to keep the warrior in sight. They reached the mesa top within seconds of each other, both breathing hard. 2 Hawks grinned. You are faster than I expected, white man. You're faster than I hoped, Jake gasped. Then they were fighting, and conversation became impossible. 2 Hawks was good, trained in wrestling and striking, his movements economical and efficient. He came in low, trying for a takedown. Jake sprawled, using his weight to stay upright, then countered with a short punch to the ribs. They broke apart, circled. 2 Hawks feinted left, went right, caught Jake with a solid hit to the jaw. Stars exploded in Jake's vision, but he rolled with the punch, turned it into momentum, swept 2 Hawks' legs. The warrior went down, but didn't stay down. He rolled, came up with a handful of dirt, threw it at Jake's eyes. Jake turned his head, mostly blocked it, but the distraction was enough. 2 Hawks was on him, strong hands grabbing for a chokehold. Jake drove his elbow back, felt it connect with something solid. 2 Hawks grunted, but didn't let go. They grappled, strength against strength, technique against technique. Jake managed to slip the hold, spin out, but 2 Hawks was already adapting, already attacking from a new angle. It went on like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Neither man could gain a decisive advantage. Both were skilled, both were tough, both refused to quit. Finally, almost simultaneously, they each landed punches that sent the other stumbling backward. They stood there, swaying, bleeding from various small cuts, breathing like bellows. 2 Hawks wiped blood from his split lip and started laughing. Enough! You fight well, Jake Brennan. You're better, Jake admitted. Glad you're on my side. 2 Hawks offered his hand, and Jake took it. They walked back down the mountain together, battered but not beaten. And somehow, that shared experience created a bond that hours of talking never could have. Dakota was waiting, and this time, when he looked at Jake, there was approval in his eyes. You have courage, you have skill, and you do not quit when the fight turns hard. These are good qualities in an ally. Then we're allies? Jake asked. We will talk, Dakota said, which wasn't quite yes, but was better than no. Come, sit. Tell me your plan. They gathered in Dakota's wickiup, a dozen warriors and elders, forming a circle around a small fire. Kaya laid out the situation with brutal clarity. Blackwood's crimes, the ledger in Tucson, the need to gather evidence and witnesses, the plan to force Blackwood into a public confrontation where his guilt couldn't be hidden. The elders listened, asked questions, argued among themselves in Apache. Jake sat quietly, letting Kaya speak for both of them. This was her people, her language, her culture. He was the outsider here, and the smartest thing he could do was recognize that. Finally, Dakota raised his hand for silence. This plan is dangerous. Many could die.
Many are already dead, Kaya said. My family, the Thompsons, a dozen other families. How many more before we say enough? And if we fight, if we expose Blackwood, what changes? The white man's courts are not our friends. Even with evidence, even with witnesses, they may do nothing.
Then we make sure the whole territory sees, Jake spoke up.
Make it so public, so undeniable, that even corrupt judges can't ignore it. Bring in newspapers, federal marshals from Santa Fe. Make Blackwood's crimes too big to bury. An older woman spoke, her voice sharp with skepticism. And who will believe an Apache and a wanted man? They'll believe documents, Jake said. They'll believe Blackwood's own records. They'll believe when we show them proof written in his own hand. Two Hawks leaned forward. There is a woman in Socorro, Rosa Martinez. She has been collecting evidence against Blackwood for 3 years, since he killed her husband. I know Rosa, one of the other warriors said. She is afraid, but she is brave. She might help. Dakota considered this. So the plan becomes, go to Socorro, convince this woman to share her evidence, then use it to draw Blackwood into a trap where we can expose him publicly and take his ledger. That's the core of it, Jake agreed.
It is a thin plan. Much can go wrong. Yes, Kaya said simply. But doing nothing is worse. Doing nothing is death, just slower. Dakota looked around the circle, reading faces, gauging support. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded. We will help, but I send only volunteers. I will not order men to die for this. I volunteer, Two Hawks said immediately. And I, said another warrior. We will need someone to stay here, Dakota said, to protect the camp in case Blackwood attacks while we are gone. The old and the young cannot defend themselves. I will stay, said the older woman who'd spoken earlier. My fighting days are behind me, but I can still shoot straight. Others will stay with me. The planning continued, details hammered out, roles assigned. Jake found himself impressed by the efficiency, the way decisions were made through consensus rather than command. These people had been making life and death choices together for generations. They knew how to work as a unit. It was late in the evening when the council finally broke up. Jake stepped outside the wickiup, breathing in the cool mountain air, feeling the ache of his fight with Two Hawks settling into his bones. Tomorrow would hurt. Tonight wasn't much better. Kaya found him there, standing under the stars. You did well today. Two Hawks kicked my ass. But you kept fighting. That's what matters. She moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth in the cooling air. Dakota respects you now. That was not certain when we arrived. Your people are good warriors, strong, smart. They deserve better than what they've gotten. Yes, Kaya said quietly. We do. They stood in silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, Blackwood was planning his next move. Somewhere closer, bounty hunters might be tracking them. Tomorrow they'd ride for Socorro, for Rosa Martinez and her evidence. Tomorrow they'd take another step toward a confrontation that might save them or destroy them. But tonight, for just this moment, they let themselves breathe. Let themselves feel something other than fear and anger. Standing there, under the infinite stars, Jake felt Kaya's hand brush against his, just the lightest touch, there and gone. He didn't pull away, neither did she. Whatever happens, Kaya said softly, I am glad the spirits brought you to that canyon. Me too, Jake said, and meant it with everything he had. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges, new reasons to doubt they'd survive.
But tonight they had this moment of peace, this small victory of trust earned and alliances formed. It would have to be enough. In the camp behind them, warriors prepared for war. In the mountains around them, the night kept its secrets.
And in the valley below, unseen and unheard, a lone rider watched the Apache camp through a spyglass, his face hidden in shadow, his purpose unknown. The rider lowered the glass, turned his horse, and disappeared into the darkness like smoke. By morning he'd be miles away, carrying news to men who'd pay well for information. The war was coming. All the pieces were moving into position, and soon, very soon, blood would paint the desert red. Dawn broke cold in the mountains, mist clinging to the valley floor like ghostly fingers. Jake woke to find the Apache camp already stirring, warriors checking weapons, women preparing food for the journey. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary talk. These people had practiced this dance too many times, packing up and moving, always ready to flee or fight. Kaya was tying down her saddlebags when he found her. She looked up, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. Not fear, exactly. More like grim determination, mixed with something he couldn't quite name.
"We ride in 10 minutes," she said. "2 hawks and 1 other warrior, Nagi, will come with us to Socorro. The rest stay to defend the camp, if needed." "You think Blackwood knows where this place is?" "I think we should assume he knows everything until proven otherwise." She secured the last strap. "In my experience, the moment you underestimate an enemy is the moment he kills you." 2 hawks approached, leading 3 horses already saddled and ready. The third warrior, Nagi, was older, maybe 40, with gray threading through his dark hair and a face that suggested he'd seen more battles than he'd lost. His eyes were sharp, constantly scanning, the mark of a man who'd survived by paying attention. "Rosa Martinez," Nagi said without preamble. "I met her once, 3 years ago, after her husband died. She is strong, but she is afraid. Blackwood has eyes everywhere in Socorro."
"We must be very careful how we approach her." "Can she be trusted?" Jake asked.
"She loved her husband. Blackwood's men beat him to death in the street when he refused to sell his land. She watched it happen and could do nothing." Nagi's voice was flat, emotionless, but Jake heard the anger underneath. "If anyone wants Blackwood dead as much as we do, it is Rosa Martinez." They rode out as the sun cleared the eastern peaks, 4 riders moving single file down the mountain trail. Kaya led, reading the path, choosing routes that avoided open ground. 2 hawks took rear guard, constantly checking their back trail. Nagi and Jake rode in the middle, and Jake found himself studying the older warrior, curious about the scars that marked his arms and the way he held himself, coiled tight like a spring, ready to release. "You have questions," Nagi said, without looking at him. "I can feel your eyes." "How long have you been fighting?" Jake asked. "All my life. 43 winters."
"The first soldiers came when I was 7. They burned our village, killed my father. I have been at war ever since." He paused. "You are wondering if I hate you because you are white." The thought crossed my mind. I hate men who kill for no reason, who take what is not theirs, who lie and steal and murder. Now Nagi did look at him. The color of their skin matters less than the color of their hearts. Blackwood has a black heart. You, I think, do not. That is enough for now." They descended from the mountains into rolling hills covered in piñón and sage. The air grew warmer, drier, tasting of dust and distance. By midday they'd left the peaks behind, riding through territory that was neither mountain nor desert, but something in between. Transitional land, Kaya called it, where one world ended and another began. It was Two Hawks who spotted the riders first. He gave a low whistle, the kind that sounded like a bird if you weren't listening close. Everyone pulled up, hands moving to weapons. Jake followed Two Hawks' gaze and saw them, 4 riders on a distant ridgeline, too far to identify, but close enough to be concerning. "Blackwoodsmen?" Jake asked. "Or bounty hunters," Kaya said. "Either way, they are tracking us." "How long have they been there?" "I noticed them 20 minutes ago," Two Hawks said calmly. "Wanted to see if they would come closer or keep their distance." "And?" "They keep their distance, which means they are smart, waiting for reinforcements maybe, or for us to make a mistake." Nagi studied the riders through narrowed eyes. "We could lose them in the canyons ahead. Plenty of places to hide, to set ambush." "Or we could keep going," Kaya said. "Let them follow. See where they lead us." Jake understood her thinking. If those riders were reporting back to someone, following them might reveal where Blackwoodsmen were gathering. Information was as valuable as bullets in this kind of fight. "It's risky." "Everything we do is risky," Kaya pointed out. "At least this risk teaches us something." They rode on, angling toward Socorro, but taking a wandering path, sometimes doubling back, sometimes circling. The riders on the ridge matched their movements, staying parallel, never closing the distance. Professional tracking, patient, dangerous. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they spotted Socorro in the distance. The town was small, maybe 300 people, clinging to the edge of the Rio Grande like a child clutching its mother's skirt. Mining town originally, now a waypoint for ranchers and drifters, the kind of place where asking too many questions could get you killed. "We cannot ride in together," Nagi said. 4 of us, including 2 Apache in traditional clothing. Every eye in town would mark us. Every tongue would wag. "I will go alone," Kaya said. "Find Rosa. Make contact." "Absolutely not," Jake said immediately. "It is not safe." Kaya's eyes flashed. "I am not fragile, Jake Brennan. I have survived worse than a mining town." "I know you are strong. But you are also Apache in a white town where Blackwood has influence. Please, let me go with you at least." "He is right," Two Hawks said reluctantly. "2 together are safer than 1 alone. Nagi and I will watch from the outskirts. If there is trouble, we will know." Kaya looked like she wanted to argue, but pragmatism won out. "Fine, but we go as travelers, nothing more. No weapons visible, no reason for suspicion." They left their rifles with Two Hawks and Nagi, keeping only concealed weapons. Jake's pistol tucked under his vest, Kaya's knife hidden in her boot. As they rode toward Socorro, Jake noticed Kaya had wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and head, obscuring her features, making her look more Mexican than Apache. Smart. Safer. Socorro's main street was exactly what Jake expected. Saloons, general store, assayer's office, livery stable. Men lounged on porches, watching newcomers with the idle curiosity of people who had nothing better to do. A few women moved between buildings, hurrying, eyes down, the universal posture of those who knew their place and kept to it. Rosa's Cantina sat at the far end of the street, a small adobe building with faded paint and a sign that hung crooked. Not prosperous, but still standing, which said something about the woman who ran it. They tied their horses and stepped inside. The cantina was dim, smelling of spilled beer and old smoke. A few patrons sat at rough wooden tables, nursing drinks, playing cards.
Behind the bar stood a woman who could only be Rosa Martinez, 40-something, with strong features and eyes that had seen too much sorrow. She looked up as they entered, and Jake saw her freeze for just a heartbeat before her professional mask slipped into place. "Welcome, travelers," she said in accented English. "What can I get you?" "Just water," Jake said. "And maybe a few minutes of your time, Mrs. Martinez, if you can spare it." The use of her name made her stiffen. Her eyes darted to the other patrons, checking if they were paying attention. Most were absorbed in their cards and drinks. She jerked her head toward a back room. "Storage room needs organizing. Perhaps you could help, senor?" They followed her through a doorway into a small room stacked with barrels and crates. Rosa closed the door, then turned on them, her face suddenly fierce. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" Kaya lowered her shawl. "My name is Kaya Redfeather. Sam Porter sent us, and a warrior named Nagi, who met you 3 years ago." Recognition and fear warred in Rosa's expression. "Nagi. Yes, after my husband died." She looked at Jake. "And you?" "Jake Brennan. I am a Texas Ranger, or I was. Now I am a wanted man because I tried to bring justice to Luther Blackwood." At Blackwood's name, Rosa's face went pale. "Keep your voice down."
"He has ears everywhere in this town." "We know," Kaya said gently. "We know he killed your husband. We know you have been collecting evidence against him. We need that evidence, Rosa. We are going to stop him, but we need your help." "Stop him!" Rosa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No one stops Blackwood. He is too powerful, too rich. He owns the judge, the sheriff, half the businesses from here to Tucson." "He does not own you," Jake said. "You have been gathering proof for 3 years. Why, if you thought nothing could be done?" Rosa was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I could not let my husband's death mean nothing. Because I thought, maybe someday, someone would come who could use it. Someone brave enough or crazy enough to fight." "We are both," Kaya said. "Brave and crazy. But we are not alone. We have warriors. We have allies. We have a plan. Give us the evidence, Rosa. Help us make your husband's death mean something." Tears shimmered in Rosa's eyes. "If I help you and you fail, Blackwood will kill me. Slowly. He does not forgive. If you do nothing, you spend the rest of your life afraid," Jake said. "I know. I have been running for 6 months, every day looking over my shoulder, every night wondering if I will see morning. That is not living, Mrs. Martinez. That is just waiting to die." Rosa wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. Some decision crystallized behind her gaze. "Wait here." She disappeared into another room, returning minutes later with a metal box, old and dented, locked with a simple padlock. She opened it, and Jake saw it was stuffed with papers. Letters, deeds, bank transfer records, a ledger of death written in black ink and fading pencil. "Everything I could find," Rosa said. "Land deals, payoffs to Judge Morrison, orders to remove homesteaders. There are names here, dates, amounts. 32 families, all murdered or driven off their land. All within 5 years." Jake took the box, feeling its weight, not heavy in pounds, but in meaning. This was evidence, real evidence, the kind that could hang a man like Blackwood if presented properly. "There is more," Rosa continued. "A ledger. Blackwood keeps it in his office in Tucson. That has everything. Every crime, every murder, every piece of corruption. But it is locked in a safe, guarded constantly. I tried to get to it once, nearly got killed. We know about the ledger, Kaya said. We will get it. But first we need to survive long enough to use this evidence. Is there anything else we should know? Any weakness in Blackwood's operation? Rosa thought. He is cautious, but he is also proud. He likes to show his power, to remind people who is in charge. Every month he comes to Socorro, makes a circuit of the businesses he controls, collects his money. He will be here in 3 days. 3 days, Jake repeated.
That was not much time. And he never comes alone, Rosa warned. At least 10 men, armed, dangerous. A commotion from the main room interrupted them. Voices raised, chairs scraping. Rosa's eyes went wide. Hide, now! Jake and Kaya pressed against the wall as Rosa stepped back into the cantina. Through the crack in the door, Jake could see what had caused the disturbance. 5 men had entered, all wearing guns, all moving with the confidence of those who knew the law would not touch them. And leading them was a man Jake recognized from wanted posters and nightmares. Virgil Cade. His half-brother looked older than Jake remembered, harder, with lines carved into his face by violence and whiskey. But the eyes were the same, cold, calculating, always looking for an angle, an advantage, a way to win. "Afternoon, Rosa," Virgil drawled. "Heard you might have had some interesting visitors. Apache woman and a man matching my brother's description. You seen anyone like that?" Rosa's voice was steady. "Many people come through here, senor. I do not pay much attention to faces." Virgil walked slowly through the cantina, studying each patron. "That is a shame, because there is good money for information about Jake Brennan. $3,000. Enough for a woman like you to leave this place, start fresh, somewhere safe." "I have told you, I have seen no one." Virgil's hand shot out, grabbing Rosa's wrist. "You are lying. I can smell lies, Mrs. Martinez, and you reek of them." In the storage room, Jake's hand went to his pistol. Kaya touched his arm, shaking her head. "Not yet. Wait." But Jake could feel his control slipping, could feel the old rage building. That was his blood out there, his kin, hurting an innocent woman. Then Virgil released Rosa and smiled. "No matter. If Jake is here, he will show himself soon enough. He always was predictable, always had to play the hero." He raised his voice. "You hear that, little brother? I know you are close. I can feel it. You cannot hide from me. We share blood. That means something." Jake's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Kaya leaned close, her lips nearly touching his ear. "He is baiting you. Do not give him what he wants." She was right. Of course, she was right. But knowing it and feeling it were different things. Virgil had always known exactly how to get under his skin, even when they were children, especially when they were children. Virgil and his men finally left, their boots loud on the wooden floor. Rosa waited a full minute before returning to the storage room, her hand shaking as she opened the door. "You must go," she whispered urgently. "He will come back with more men. He will search every building." "Come with us," Kaya said. "It is not safe for you here now." "No. If I run, he will know I helped you. Better I stay. Play innocent. I am good at it after 3 years of practice." Rosa pushed the metal box into Jake's hands. "Take this. Use it. Make Blackwood pay for what he has done. Make my husband's death mean something." "We will," Jake promised. "I swear it." They slipped out the back door into the alley, moving quickly but not running. Running drew attention. They walked with purpose, two travelers leaving a cantina, nothing suspicious, nothing worth remembering. But inside, Jake's heart was hammering, and he could feel Virgil's presence like a shadow on his neck. They were halfway to their horses when the first shot rang out. The bullet took a chunk out of the wall beside Jake's head, spraying adobe dust. He spun, drawing his pistol, seeing Virgil's men pouring out of buildings up and down the street. Not 5 men. 10, 15. An ambush. "Run!" Kaya shouted, already sprinting for the horses. More shots. The street erupted in chaos. Townspeople scattering, diving for cover. Jake fired twice, covering Kaya, then ran after her.
A bullet tugged at his sleeve, but did not bite flesh. Another cracked past his ear, close enough to feel the wind. They reached the horses, mounted in seconds. Kaya wheeled her animal, bow already in hand, and fired. One of Virgil's men fell, clutching an arrow in his shoulder. Jake fired his pistol, making the others dive for cover, buying precious seconds. Then they were riding, galloping out of Socorro, with bullets chasing them, hooves pounding the hard-packed earth. Behind them, Jake could hear Virgil shouting orders, organizing pursuit. The man was relentless. He would not stop, not ever. 2 hawks and Nagi appeared from a side canyon, joining them, adding their guns to the defense. They rode hard, pushing the horses to their limits, taking a winding path that made following difficult. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but never disappeared entirely. As the sun touched the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold, they finally slowed.
No sounds of followers. For now, they had escaped. "That was too close," Two Hawks said, breathing hard. "Virgil Cade," Jake said bitterly. "My half-brother. The best tracker in Arizona territory. He will not stop until one of us is dead." Kaya looked at him, understanding in her eyes. "Then we make sure it is not you." They rode through the night, putting miles between themselves and Socorro, between themselves and Virgil. In Jake's saddlebag, Rosa's metal box rattled with every step, full of evidence, full of hope, full of the promise that maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. But first they had to survive, and with Virgil Cade on their trail, survival was far from guaranteed. The moon rose, cold and white, lighting their path. Somewhere behind them, a hunter pursued his prey. Somewhere ahead, a reckoning waited. And caught between, 4 riders raced through the darkness, carrying the weight of the dead and the hopes of the living. The war had begun in earnest now.
No more planning, no more preparation, just survival, speed, and the desperate hope that they would live long enough to finish what they had started. They rode through the night like ghosts, pushing the horses as hard as they dared, stopping only when the animals could go no further. By dawn, they'd put 30 miles between themselves and Socorro, between themselves and Virgil Cade's guns. But 30 miles meant nothing to a man like Virgil. He'd tracked men across twice that distance and still brought them down. The sun rose on a landscape of red rock and scattered juniper, harsh and beautiful in equal measure. They stopped in a canyon that offered water and concealment, letting the horses drink while they took stock of what they'd gained and what they'd lost. "Rosa's evidence," Jake said, opening the metal box again in daylight. "It is solid. Deeds signed under duress, bank transfers showing payoffs, letters from Blackwood to Judge Morrison discussing how to eliminate homesteaders. Any honest court would hang him for this." "Honest courts are rare in this territory,"
Nagi said darkly, especially when the criminal owns the judges. That is why we need more than just documents, Kaya said. She was cleaning her bow, checking each arrow, the ritual of a warrior preparing for battle. We need witnesses, people willing to stand up publicly and testify. Sam is gathering people, Jake reminded her. Settlers who lost family, people with grudges against Blackwood. By the time we return to his ranch, we should have a small army. Two Hawks looked skeptical. Small armies die against big ones. Blackwood has money. He can hire 50 men, 100 if he wants. How many will Sam gather? 20? 30? Quality over quantity, Jake said. We do not need to defeat Blackwood in open battle. We need to expose him, force him into a position where his crimes become public knowledge. Make it impossible for even corrupt officials to ignore. And how do we do that? Nagi asked. The older warrior was sharpening his knife, the rhythmic scraping of stone on steel punctuating his words. He will not simply confess because we ask nicely. Kaya looked up from her bow. We make him desperate. Make him angry enough to make mistakes. Men like Blackwood are careful when they feel safe, but when they feel threatened, when their empire starts crumbling, they lash out. They get sloppy. You want to provoke him, Two Hawks said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Make him come to us on ground we choose. Exactly. Kaya stood, rolling her shoulders to release tension. We have evidence. Soon we will have witnesses. What we need next is a stage. A place where Blackwood's downfall will be seen by everyone who matters.
Jake thought about it, turning the problem over in his mind like a puzzle. Fort Bowie, the army post, federal authority. If we could get Blackwood there, expose his crimes in front of army officers, they would have to act. Federal jurisdiction trumps territorial corruption. The army has not been friendly to Apache, Nagi said carefully. Why would they listen to us? They would not listen to just us, Jake agreed. But they might listen to a U.S. Marshal. Sam mentioned sending word to Santa Fe, to Marshal Daniel Hayes. If we could get Hayes to Fort Bowie with this evidence, if we could arrange a formal inquiry, Blackwood would have to respond. And when he does, we take him down. Two Hawks nodded slowly. It is bold, risky, but it could work. How long to reach Fort Bowie from here? Kaya asked. 3 days hard riding, Nagi said. 2 if we push very hard and the horses hold up. And Sam's ranch? 4 days in the opposite direction. Kaya considered this. We split up. 2 of us go to Fort Bowie, make contact with the commander, prepare the ground. 2 of us go to Sam, gather our forces, coordinate with the marshal from Santa Fe. I should go to Fort Bowie, Jake said. I know military protocol, know how to talk to army officers, and I can present Rosa's evidence in terms they will understand. I will go with you, Kaya said. No. Jake's voice was gentle but firm. Your people need you. Takota will not commit his warriors to this fight based on Sam's word alone. He needs to hear from you, needs to know the plan has a real chance of success. Kaya started to protest, but Nagi cut in. He is right, Kaya. Your voice carries weight with our people. Mine does not anymore. I left the tribe for 10 years, only recently returned. They trust you. Then I go with Kaya to the Apache camp and to Sam, Two Hawks said. Nagi goes with Jake to Fort Bowie. Nagi knows the fort, knows some of the scouts who work there. He can smooth the way. It made sense tactically, even if Jake did not like the idea of separating from Kaya. In the short time they'd been together,
She'd become more than an ally. She was a partner, someone who understood him, who fought beside him as an equal. The thought of riding into danger without her watching his back felt wrong. But this was bigger than personal preference. This was about winning. "We meet back at Sam's ranch in 6 days," Jake said. "That gives us time to do what we need to do and regroup. If everything goes according to plan, we will have the army, the marshal, witnesses, and evidence all in place. Then we spring the trap." "And if it does not go according to plan?" Two Hawks asked. "Then we improvise," Kaya said with a slight smile. "We are good at that." They divided supplies, ammunition, and the contents of Rosa's box, each pair taking enough to make their case if separated.
Jake watched Kaya mount her horse, feeling the weight of the coming separation already. She caught his eye and held it for a long moment. "Be careful, Jake Brennan. That brother of yours will not stop hunting you." "I know. You be careful too. Blackwood is not the only threat out there." She nodded, then something softened in her face. She rode close, leaned down, and touched her hand to his cheek. Just for a moment, just long enough for the warmth of her skin to burn into his memory. 6 days. Do not make me come looking for your body." 6 days, he promised. Then they were riding in opposite directions, 4 riders becoming 2 pairs, each heading toward their own kind of danger. Jake watched until Kaya and Two Hawks disappeared into the morning haze, then turned to Nagi. "Fort Bowie," he said. "Let us go convince the army to help us kill a rich man." Nagi's smile was sharp as broken glass. "This should be interesting." They rode hard, stopping only when necessary, pushing through terrain that grew progressively more difficult as they approached the Chiricahua Mountains. Nagi proved to be good company, quiet but observant, with a dry sense of humor that surfaced at unexpected moments. "You care for her," Nagi said on the second day, not a question but a statement. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to anyone with eyes," the older warrior smiled. "She cares for you too, though she would cut out her tongue before saying it aloud. Apache women do not give their hearts easily. We have learned too often that the men we love end up dead." Jake thought about that. Her family, Blackwood's men, she watched them die. "Yes, and she has carried that weight alone for 3 years. You are the first person I have seen her trust since that night. Do not make her regret it." "I will try not to." "Try hard," Nagi said seriously, "because if you hurt her, I will kill you myself. Brother or not to a wanted man, ally or not, I will put an arrow through your heart." Jake looked at the older warrior and saw no humor in his eyes, only absolute sincerity. "Understood." "Good. Now that we have that settled, tell me about your brother, this Virgil Cade. What kind of man is he?" Jake considered how to answer. "Virgil and I had the same father, but different mothers. My mother died when I was young. Pa took in Virgil's mother, married her, raised Virgil as his own. But Virgil never felt like he belonged. Always felt like he was second choice, second best. And that made him cruel? That made him competitive. Everything was a contest. Who could shoot better, ride faster, fight harder? Pa tried to treat us equal, but Virgil could not see it. All he saw was me getting praised, me becoming a ranger, me being the son Pa was proud of. So now he hunts you to prove he is better. Partly, but I think there is more to it." Jake paused, remembering. "When I broke out of jail, Virgil was the first bounty hunter Blackwood hired. Not because Virgil is the cheapest or the closest, but because he is the best tracker, and Blackwood knew we were related.
Knew Virgil would have extra motivation. Nagy absorbed this. Family makes the best enemies. They know all your weaknesses. Yes, Jake agreed grimly. Yes, they do. Fort Bowie appeared on the afternoon of the third day, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures clustered around a parade ground, all protected by a low wall that would not stop a determined attack, but would slow one down. American flag snapping in the desert wind, soldiers drilling in the heat, the organized chaos of military life continuing regardless of the larger dramas playing out in the territory. They stopped on a ridge overlooking the fort. Nagy studied it with the eye of someone who'd attacked such places before and knew their strengths and weaknesses.
"The commander is Major Edmund Garrett," Nagy said. "He is fair, as white officers go. He does not start fights with Apache, but he will finish them. He listens before he shoots. That is rare."
Will he listen to us?
If we approach correctly, yes. But we must be smart about it. I cannot simply ride in there. Too many soldiers remember me from the old days, from when I fought against them. But you are white. You were a ranger. They will hear you.
What do you suggest?
I stay here. You go in. Present yourself as a former ranger seeking Army assistance in bringing a criminal to justice. Show them some of Rosa's evidence, enough to prove you are serious. Request a meeting with Major Garrett. Do not mention Apache involvement until you have the Major's attention. It was a good plan, though Jake did not love the idea of walking into a military fort as a wanted man. But the warrant was territorial, not federal. The Army might not even know about it, and if they did, they might not care. Jurisdiction was a complicated thing in the territories. "If I'm not back by sunset," Jake said, "assume it went badly." "If you are not back by sunset, I will assume you are in a cell waiting to be hanged," Nagy corrected, "and I will decide whether rescuing you is worth the trouble." Jake smiled despite the tension. "Fair enough." He rode down to the fort alone, hands visible, rifle secured to his saddle, making no threatening moves. The sentries challenged him at the gate, and he identified himself as Jake Brennan, former Texas Ranger, seeking to speak with Major Garrett on a matter of territorial justice. They made him wait in the sun for 20 minutes while messages were sent and received. Finally, a young lieutenant emerged, crisp and professional. "Mr. Brennan, the Major will see you. Please follow me." Major Edmund Garrett was everything Jake hoped for, and nothing he expected. Mid-50s, gray hair, ramrod-straight posture, but with eyes that suggested intelligence rather than just blind obedience. He studied Jake from behind his desk, taking in the dust, the wear, the look of a man who'd been running hard. "Lieutenant Hayes tells me you are a former ranger." "I knew some rangers. Good men, mostly. Which unit?" "Company D, out of El Paso. Served under Captain Marcus Webb." "Webb?" Garrett nodded. "I met him once. Solid officer. He's still with the Rangers?" "Died 2 years ago. Cholera." "Shame." Garrett gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me what brings a former ranger to my fort looking like he has been chased by the devil himself." Jake sat and began talking. He laid out the situation methodically, the way he would have written a report back in his ranger days. Blackwood's land grabs, the murdered families, the corruption of Judge Morrison, Sheriff Wade's involvement. He produced letters from Rosa's collection, land deeds signed under obvious duress, bank transfers that showed payoffs. Garrett listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When Jake finished, the Major leaned back in his chair. "This is a serious accusation against a powerful man.
Luther Blackwood has friends in Washington, friends in the territorial government. If I act on this and it turns out to be false, my career is over. I understand, sir. That is why I am not asking you to arrest him. I am asking you to provide a neutral ground for an inquiry. Bring in a U.S. Marshal from Santa Fe, a man named Daniel Hayes, who cannot be bought. Convene a formal hearing here at the fort where Blackwood cannot intimidate witnesses or bribe officials. Let the evidence speak for itself. And you think Blackwood would attend such a hearing? If it is official, if it is public, if his reputation is at stake, yes. Men like Blackwood live on their reputations.
They cannot afford to look weak or guilty by refusing to defend themselves.
Garrett considered this. Marshal Hayes, I know of him. Good reputation. Honest. He would not come unless he believed there was substance to this. Then let me send word to him. Sam Porter, a retired ranger who lives near Socorro, has already made contact. Hayes could be here in a week. And what about you, Mr. Brennan? Garrett's eyes sharpened. There is a warrant out for your arrest. Murder of a sheriff. Should I be detaining you right now? Jake's hand did not move toward his gun, but he was acutely aware of how quickly this could go wrong. That warrant was issued by Judge Morrison, the same judge taking bribes from Blackwood. The sheriff I shot, Thomas Wade, drew on me first. I was defending myself and trying to arrest him for murder. The trial was a sham. I am not asking you to ignore the law, Major. I am asking you to help me prove the law was corrupted.
For a long moment, Garrett said nothing. Then he stood, walked to the window, looked out at his fort, his command, his responsibility. I cannot officially harbor a fugitive, but I also cannot ignore evidence of widespread corruption and murder. Here is what I will do. I will send word to Marshal Hayes, ask him to come to Fort Bowie for consultation on territorial matters. If he brings this case with him, I will provide a venue for a hearing. Fair, open, with witnesses under Army protection, so they cannot be intimidated. And me? You leave this fort right now and stay away until the hearing. If you are still a wanted man when this is over, I will have to enforce that warrant. But if the hearing exposes Morrison's corruption and clears your name, then the warrant becomes void. Garrett turned back to face him. That is the best I can offer. It was more than Jake had hoped for. Thank you, Major. You will not regret this. I already regret it, Garrett said dryly. I am setting myself against a man with more money and influence than God. But I did not join the Army to protect rich criminals. I joined to serve justice. Sometimes that means taking a risk. Jake stood, shook the Major's hand. One more thing, sir. When the hearing happens, there will be Apache witnesses, people Blackwood harmed. Will they be allowed to testify? Garrett's expression went carefully neutral. Apache testimony is not generally accepted in territorial courts. This is a federal hearing on federal land. Different rules, sir. You are technically correct. Garrett smiled slightly. And I am technically in charge of who testifies and who does not. Yes, Mr. Brennan. Apache witnesses will be heard. If this is truly about justice, then everyone affected deserves a voice. Jake left the fort feeling something he had not felt in months. Hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe, just maybe, this insane plan would actually work. Nagi was waiting where Jake left him, and the warrior's eyes lit up when he saw Jake's expression. It went well. It went well. Major Garrett is with us. He is contacting Marshal Hayes. In 1 week, we will have a federal hearing at Fort Bowie, and Blackwood will have to answer for his crimes. If he comes, he will come. His pride will not let him stay away. They rode away from the fort as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. In the distance, smoke rose from Apache camps and settler ranches, from mining towns and military forts. All the pieces of the territory's complicated puzzle, usually at odds, about to be brought together in a confrontation that would determine the future of this land. 6 days, Nagy said. We meet the others at Sam's ranch in 6 days. And then? Then we finish what we started. Nagy's smile was fierce. Then we make Luther Blackwood pay for every drop of blood he has spilled. They rode through the gathering darkness, two men who should have been enemies, united by a common cause. Behind them, Fort Bowie settled into its nightly routine, soldiers unaware that in a week their parade ground would host a battle not of bullets but of words, where justice would face corruption, and only one would walk away. Ahead, somewhere in the vast territory, Kaya and Two Hawks were gathering their own forces, convincing warriors and settlers to risk everything for a chance at justice. And somewhere else, in his office in Tucson, Luther Blackwood sat in his leather chair, smoking his expensive cigars, counting his money, secure in his power, completely unaware that his empire was about to come crashing down around him. The pieces were moving. The trap was being set. And soon, very soon, the final confrontation would begin. 6 days passed like water through cupped hands, too fast and too slow at once. Jake and Nagy made the hard ride back to Sam Porter's ranch, pushing through country that seemed to grow more hostile with each mile. The land itself knew something was coming, could feel the tension building like a storm gathering on the horizon. They arrived on the evening of the 6th day, just as the sun was bleeding into the western sky, and what they found made Jake's chest swell with something close to pride. Sam's ranch had transformed into a war camp. 30 people, maybe more, scattered across the property. Settlers with old rifles and grim faces. Apache warriors checking bowstrings and sharpening knives. A few Mexican vaqueros who'd lost land to Blackwood's greed. All of them united by loss, by anger, by the desperate hope that maybe this time justice would win. And there, standing by the corral talking to Sam, was Kaya. She looked up as they rode in, and the smile that crossed her face made the 6 days of separation worth every hard mile. Jake dismounted, and before he could think better of it, she was there, her hand gripping his forearm, Apache style, warrior to warrior. "You made it," she said simply. "So did you." He looked past her at the gathered forces. "And you brought an army." "A small one, but motivated." She gestured around the camp. 20 Apache warriors, including Two Hawks and Dakota himself. 15 settlers Sam gathered. 5 vaqueros from Rosastown who slipped away before Blackwood's men could stop them. And 1 U.S. Marshal who arrived yesterday. "Hayes is here already?" "Come, I will introduce you." Marshal Daniel Hayes was everything Jake had hoped for and more. 50 years old, weathered like saddle leather, with eyes that missed nothing, and a reputation for honesty that was legendary even in a territory where honesty was rare. He stood when Jake approached, offered his hand. "Jake Brennan, I have been reading about you. Interesting story." "Most of it is lies, Marshal." "I figured as much. Judge Morrison is crooked as a snake's backbone, and Sheriff Wade was on Blackwood's payroll. I brought the territorial records." Hayes gestured to a leather satchel. "Wade was involved in at least 8 suspicious deaths before you shot him. You did the territory a favor, though that does not make it legal. Will you help us anyway? I am here, am I not?" Hayes smiled slightly.
Major Garrett sent word. A formal inquiry at Fort Bowie in 4 days. Federal jurisdiction, which means Morrison cannot touch it. I have subpoenaed Blackwood to appear and answer questions about his land acquisitions. If he refuses, he looks guilty. If he comes, we nail him with evidence. And if he comes with an army? Then we have the U.S. Army right there to arrest every last one of them. Hayes pulled out a document. I also have warrants for Judge Morrison and 5 of Blackwood's known enforcers. Soon as this inquiry is over, we move fast.
No time for them to run or destroy evidence. Jake felt the plan solidifying, becoming real. What do you need from us? Witnesses, lots of them. People willing to stand up publicly and testify about what Blackwood did. Can you deliver that? We can, Kaya said, stepping forward. My people will speak. The settlers here will speak. Rosa Martinez sent word she will come from Socorro, despite the danger. Good. Hayes studied Kaya with interest. You are Kaya Redfeather. Dakota spoke of you. Said you were the reason any of this was happening. Said you had the courage to stand when others would hide. I had help, Kaya said, glancing at Jake. Best kind of courage often does. Hayes turned back to Jake. 4 days. We move everyone to Fort Bowie under cover of darkness the night before. Major Garrett has agreed to provide protection for witnesses. Once we are on federal land, Blackwood cannot touch them without declaring war on the United States government. Even he is not that stupid. The next 3 days were organized chaos. Sam's ranch became a training ground, a planning center, a fortress. Apache warriors taught settlers how to move quietly, how to watch for ambush. Settlers taught Apache how to testify in white man's courts, how to speak in ways that would be heard and believed. Old enemies learning to work together, bound by common cause. On the second night, as Jake stood watch at the edge of camp, a voice came from the darkness. Hello, little brother. Jake's hand went to his gun, but he didn't draw. Virgil Cade stepped into the firelight, alone, hands held away from his weapons. He looked thinner than in Socorro, eyes shadowed by something Jake couldn't name. Exhaustion, maybe, or regret. Around them, Apache warriors stirred. 2 hawks materialized from the shadows, bow drawn. Jake raised his hand. Wait. Came a long way to find you, Virgil said, his voice rough. Been tracking you for 3 days. Then you know what we're doing tomorrow. You here to collect Blackwood's bounty? Virgil's laugh was bitter. Had you in my sights twice since Socorro. Could have shot you in the back both times. He looked at the ground. But I couldn't pull the trigger. Jake waited, watching his brother's face in the firelight. Pa used to say family was everything, Virgil continued. I never believed him. Thought he loved you more. Thought you stole what should have been mine. He shook his head. But watching you these past weeks, fighting for people who aren't even your kind, risking everything for a woman who's worth more than all of Blackwood's gold, I realized something. What's that? You became the man Pa wanted both of us to be. And I became this, Virgil gestured at himself. A hired gun chasing his own blood for money. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of jealousy and competition, and words never spoken. It's not too late, Jake said quietly. You could testify tomorrow. Tell them what Blackwood hired you to do. It would help. Yeah, it would. But I'd hang for the other men I've killed. Virgil unbuckled his gun belt, let it fall to the dirt. I'm riding to Yuma, turning myself in to the territorial marshal there. Figure if I'm going to prison, might as well do it on my own terms.
He turned to leave, then stopped. That woman, Kaya, she looks at you the way Ma used to look at Pa before the fever took her. Don't waste that, Jake. Don't lose her the way I lost everything that mattered. Virgil. And when that baby comes, Virgil said, something breaking in his voice, you be the father I never could be. You hear me? Jake nodded, throat tight. I hear you. Virgil walked back into the darkness. Jake listened to the hoofbeats fade, knowing he'd never see his brother again. But somehow, in that moment of goodbye, they'd found something they'd never had as children. Understanding. Maybe even forgiveness. Two Hawks lowered his bow. You let him go. He was already gone, Jake said. Just took him a while to figure it out. Jake watched Kaya move through the camp like a general preparing for war, which in a sense she was. She spoke with each witness, helped them prepare their testimony, gave them courage when fear threatened to overwhelm. She was magnificent, and he found himself unable to look away. On the third night, she found him sitting alone on the ridge above the ranch, looking out at the desert under starlight. Thinking? She asked, settling beside him. Worrying. We have one chance at this. If it goes wrong, people die. Good people. People are already dying. Blackwood sees to that. She was quiet for a moment. Do you know what my grandmother used to say? She said the spirits put us where we are needed. Not where we want to be, not where it is safe, but where we can do the most good. You think the spirits put us in that canyon? You being attacked by wolves, me riding past at exactly the right moment? I think the spirits guide us to where we need to be. She looked at him, starlight reflected in her dark eyes. I was meant to meet you, Jake Brennan, meant to trust you, meant to fight beside you. Whether we live or die at the end, that part is already done. The spirits have spoken. Jake reached for her hand, laced his fingers through hers. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was, and she would have liked you. Kaya squeezed his hand. Tomorrow we ride to Fort Bowie. Tomorrow we face Blackwood. Are you ready? No, but I will do it anyway. That is what courage is. Doing what must be done, despite the fear. She stood, pulling him up with her. Come, Dakota wishes to speak with you. Dakota sat by a fire, surrounded by his warriors. When Jake and Kaya approached, the old elder gestured for them to sit. The other warriors moved back slightly, giving them space while still close enough to hear. Jake Brennan, Dakota said formally, you have brought my people into this fight. If we fail, Blackwood will use it as an excuse to destroy what is left of us. The army may not protect us. We could all die. I know, Jake said, and if you want to pull out, I will understand. This is not your fight. That is where you are wrong. Dakota leaned forward, and his eyes were fierce. This is exactly our fight. We have been running, hiding, dying slowly for years. You offer us a chance to stand, to be heard, to matter. That is worth the risk. Two Hawks spoke up. We fight not because we think we will win. We fight because not fighting is the same as being already dead. But I want you to understand something, Dakota continued. We do not fight for white man's justice. We fight for our land, our people, our future. If your courts fail us, if this hearing becomes another betrayal, we will take our own justice, with arrows and fire if necessary. Fair enough, Jake said. I cannot promise the system will work. I can only promise I will give everything I have to make it work. Dakota studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "That is enough. You have proven yourself a man of honor. Whatever happens tomorrow, you will always be welcome in my camp." The words hit Jake harder than he expected. To be accepted by these people, who had every reason to hate and distrust him, felt like a gift beyond measure. "Thank you. That means more than you know." That night, the camp held a ceremony. Apache drums and settler fiddles creating a strange harmony. People who should have been enemies sharing food, telling stories, preparing their spirits for what was to come. Jake watched Kaya dance with her people, graceful and fierce, and felt his heart clench with something that was not quite fear and not quite hope, but somewhere in between. When she returned to him, slightly breathless, he pulled her aside, away from the fires and the music. "Kaya, if tomorrow goes badly, if Blackwood has tricks we have not anticipated, I want you to know something." "Do not," she said, putting her fingers against his lips. "Do not say goodbye. We are not done yet. We have not finished our story." "I know, but just in case." He took her hand, held it tight. "You made me remember why I became a ranger in the first place. You gave me back my purpose. Whatever happens, thank you for that." She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she leaned in and kissed him, not gentle, not tentative, but with all the passion and fear and hope she'd been carrying. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "You are my man now, Jake Brennan," she said fiercely. "Not because I need you, not because you saved me, but because I choose you, because you are worthy of being chosen." "And you are my woman," he said, the words feeling both strange and absolutely right. "Whatever the spirits have planned, we face it together." They held each other as the music played and the fires burned. Two people who had found each other in the chaos of violence and loss, who had built something real from the ashes of their ruined lives. Tomorrow would bring danger. Tomorrow would bring justice or death or something in between. But tonight, they had this. Dawn came too fast, as it always did before a battle. The camp was packed and moving before the sun cleared the eastern peaks, a column of 40 people riding toward Fort Bowie, toward destiny, toward whatever ending the spirits had written for them. Major Garrett met them at the fort's gate, and his eyes widened slightly at the size of the group. "Mr.
"Brennan, Marshal Hayes said you would bring witnesses. I did not expect an army."
"Every person here has testimony to give," Jake said. "Every person here lost something to Luther Blackwood. Will you hear them all?" Garrett looked over the assembled crowd, Apache and settler, Mexican and white, young and old. "I gave my word. Every voice will be heard." He gestured to the parade ground. "We have set up a platform, chairs for witnesses, space for observers. This will be done properly, by military protocol. Blackwood cannot claim impropriety." They filed into the fort, and Jake felt history shifting beneath his feet. This was bigger than one man's revenge or one woman's justice. This was about whether the law applied to everyone, or just to the poor and powerless. This was about whether the territory would be ruled by might or by right. The platform was exactly as promised, formal and official. A desk for Major Garrett and Marshal Hayes, chairs for witnesses, benches for observers, an American flag hanging behind it all, symbol of the law they were trying to uphold. And then, at precisely 10 in the morning, Luther Blackwood arrived. He came with 30 men, all armed, all dangerous.
He rode in like a king surveying his domain, dressed in an expensive suit, his silver hair gleaming in the sun, confident, arrogant, utterly certain of his invulnerability. Jake studied the man who'd caused so much pain, and what struck him was how ordinary Blackwood looked. Not a monster, not a devil, just a man who'd decided that his wants mattered more than other people's lives. The banality of evil, dressed in fine clothes and riding a thoroughbred horse. Blackwood's eyes swept over the assembled crowd, pausing on Kaya, on Dakota, on Jake himself. A slight smile crossed his face. He was not afraid. He should have been, but he was not. "Marshal Hayes," Blackwood said, dismounting with practiced ease. "Major Garrett, I received your subpoena. I am here to clear my name of these ridiculous accusations. Shall we begin?" "We shall," Hayes said. "Mr. Blackwood, please approach the platform." What followed was 4 hours of testimony that would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. Witness after witness taking the stand, telling their stories. Rosa Martinez, voice shaking but steady, describing how Blackwood's men beat her husband to death in the street. A settler named John Cooper, telling how his family was burned out, his daughter killed in the fire. An Apache woman named Nasha, speaking through a translator about the night Kaya's camp was destroyed. Blackwood sat through it all, occasionally smirking, occasionally whispering to his lawyer, never showing a crack in his armor. Then Kaya took the stand. She spoke clearly, precisely, describing the night her family died. The screams, the gunfire, the smell of burning flesh. She looked directly at Blackwood as she spoke, and her voice never wavered. "You gave the order," she said. "I heard you. You told your men, 'Burn them out. I want this land.' Those were your words. I will hear them until the day I die." Blackwood's lawyer stood. "Objection. This witness is Apache. Their testimony is not recognized in territorial law." "This is federal jurisdiction," Major Garrett said coldly. "I recognize all testimony from credible witnesses. Continue, Miss Redfeather." Kaya continued, laying out not just the crime, but the pattern. 12 families, all with land Blackwood wanted, all dead or driven off. She produced the documents from Rosa's box one by one, each one another nail in Blackwood's coffin. The audience watched in growing horror as the scope of the crimes became clear. Soldiers who'd thought they were protecting settlers realized they'd been protecting a mass murderer. Townspeople who'd admired Blackwood's success saw the blood that money was built on. Finally, Marshal Hayes stood. "Mr. Blackwood, I have here warrants for your arrest on charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, bribery of public officials, and theft of federal land. How do you plead?" For the first time, Blackwood's composure cracked. His face went red, then white. "This is absurd. I have done nothing wrong. These people are liars, all of them." "Then you will have opportunity to prove that at trial," Hayes said. "But for now, you are under arrest." Blackwood turned to his men, and Jake saw the calculation in his eyes. 30 armed men against Fort soldiers. Could he fight his way out? Would he try? "Do not," Major Garrett said quietly, but with absolute authority. "Order your men to stand down, Mr. Blackwood. You are on a military installation. If they draw weapons, my soldiers will cut them down, and you will hang for their deaths as well as all the others." The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then Blackwood's shoulders slumped. "Stand down," he told his men. "This is not over. My lawyers will tear this apart." "Perhaps," Hayes said, snapping handcuffs onto Blackwood's wrists.
But you will face justice first. After all these years, you will finally face what you have done." The crowd erupted in cheers, Apache war cries mixing with settler shouts of triumph. As soldiers led Blackwood away, Marshal Hayes turned to the crowd. "Major Garrett, I'll need your assistance with one more matter." Garrett nodded. "Judge Morrison?" "Already done." Hayes pulled out a telegram. U.S. Marshals arrested him in Tombstone this morning. When word reached him about this hearing, Morrison tried to flee. They caught him at the train station with 2 saddlebags full of Blackwood's money. A fresh wave of cheers erupted. The corrupt judge who'd perverted justice for years would finally face it himself. "The whole system," Sam Porter said, stepping forward with a grim smile. "Torn out by the roots." "Not the whole system," Hayes corrected. "Just the rotten parts. There's still good law in this territory. Today proved that." Jake felt Kaya's hand slip into his, felt her whole body trembling with relief and exhaustion and something like catharsis. "It is done," she whispered. "It is finally done." "Almost," Jake said. "There is still the trial, still the chance he could escape justice." "He will not escape. Too many people know now. Too many witnesses." She looked up at him, and tears tracked down her face, the first tears he'd ever seen her cry. "My family can rest now. They have been heard." Dakota approached, his weathered face showing more emotion than Jake had ever seen. "Kaya Redfeather, daughter of my friend, you have given our people a great gift. You have shown that Apache voices matter, that our pain is real, that we are not invisible. Whatever happens next, this day will be remembered." 2 weeks later, Jake stood outside the territorial courthouse in Santa Fe, watching as a jury filed in. The trial had lasted 5 days, each one revealing new depths to Blackwood's corruption. His lawyers had tried every trick. They claimed the ledger was forged. They attacked the credibility of Apache witnesses. They even suggested Jake had manufactured evidence to clear his own name. But the documents didn't lie. Blackwood's own handwriting filled page after page of the ledger. Dates, names, amounts paid for murder. Rosa Martinez's collection corroborated every entry. On the 3rd day, Blackwood himself took the stand. His lawyer advised against it, but arrogance won out. "I built this territory," Blackwood declared, face red with indignation. "These ungrateful settlers and savages should be thanking me for bringing civilization to this wasteland." Marshal Hayes stood. "Civilization?" He held up photographs of burned homes, of graves marking where families had been slaughtered. "You call this civilization?" Blackwood's composure finally cracked. "I did what was necessary for progress, for the future." "You murdered children for profit," Kaya said from the gallery, her voice cutting through the murmur. Blackwood's head snapped toward her. Recognition flashed in his eyes, followed by rage. You should have died with your mongrel family that night." The courtroom exploded. Even Blackwood's lawyer looked horrified at the confession that had just spilled out. The judge's gavel cracked like gunshots. "Order! Bailiff, restrain the defendant." The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Now they filed back in, faces grim. The foreman stood, a merchant from Albuquerque who'd lost a brother to Blackwood's land schemes. "On the charge of murder in the 1st degree, we find the defendant, Luther Blackwood, guilty." Jake felt Kaya's hand tighten in his. Around them, the courtroom erupted. Justice, real justice, had finally been served. The judge's gavel cracked down. "Luther Blackwood,
You are hereby sentenced to hang by the neck until dead. Sentence to be carried out in 30 days. May God have mercy on your soul." Outside the courthouse, the crowd that had gathered cheered. Settlers and Apache, Mexican and white, all united in the knowledge that one more tyrant had fallen. It was not perfect. It would not bring back the dead. But it was something. Sam Porter was waiting with horses. "So what now, you two?" Jake looked at Kaya, saw his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. "I do not know. I am a free man now, warrant cleared. I could go anywhere." "You could," Kaya agreed. "Or you could come back to the mountains. Dakota has offered you a place among us, if you want it. Teacher for the children, liaison with the army, bridge between two worlds." "Is that what you want?" Jake asked. "I want you to choose what makes you happy," she said. "But I would not object if your happiness included staying close to me." Jake laughed, pulled her close. "I think I can arrange that." 6 months later, in the hidden valley of the Chiricahua Apache, Jake Brennan stood outside a new wickiup, built in the traditional way, but sized for two. Kaya emerged, and there was a new roundness to her belly, the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine in those early days of violence and vengeance. "Are you ready?" she asked. "For fatherhood? No. For building a life with you? Yes." She smiled, took his hand, placed it on her belly. "Our child will grow up knowing both worlds, Apache and white, warrior and peacemaker. That is our gift to the future." "That is your gift," Jake said. "You taught me there was still something worth fighting for, worth living for." "We taught each other," she corrected. "That is what partners do." That morning, a rider had brought mail from Fort Bowie. Among the letters was one postmarked from Yuma Territorial Prison, the handwriting familiar despite the years. Jake had opened it while Kaya watched. Inside, just one line in Virgil's rough scrawl. "Heard about the baby. You'll be a better father than I ever could be. Some chains we choose, some we break. Glad you broke yours. V." Jake had folded the letter carefully, tucked it away. Some endings weren't neat. Some wounds never fully healed. But his brother had found his own kind of redemption, and that was enough. They stood together, looking out over the valley where Apache children played and settlers' children joined them, where old enemies were becoming friends, where a new kind of community was being born from the ashes of the old. The sun set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere out there, other fights were being fought, other injustices endured. But here, in this moment, in this place, two people who'd found each other in darkness stood together in the light. The promise of sundown was not an ending. It was a beginning. And their story, born in blood and forged in fire, would continue. Not perfect, not easy, but real and true and worth every hard mile it took to get there. Justice had been served. Love had been found. And in the Arizona Territory, on a warm evening in 1884, that was enough. That was everything.